I like best about dealing with our customers and our customer base is that it allows me to actually hear what their needs are and what they're doing and what kind of instrument they're playing, what kind of venue they're doing, what kind of are they miking their amplifier on stage, are they having to carry the load themselves with just their speaker cabinet. That helps me guide them toward the right tool. So with that in mind, right now I'm producing 3 types of amp families, you might say. There's the 22 and of course the 44, but the 22 uses 6 V6 tubes. This is a 6 V6 size tube, okay? This is a small tube, small glass envelope. It's a vacuum tube that beams the signal across from the cathode to the plate, and it's excited with voltage as it passes through the grid. That's what makes the amplification. Well, this small tube will break up pretty quick. In other words, headroom is what I'm really working up to, and I know you all understand headroom, but I still like to explain that the tube is what really dictates the amount of headroom you have in the biggest sense. So in other words, if you came to me and said, I'm a blues player, or I'm a lap steel player, or I'm a slide guitar player, and I really value some beautiful, beautiful overdriven tone, and rather than using, and nothing against the effects pedals, in fact you're going to hear me, when I get up to my larger amps that use the bigger tubes, you're going to hear me say that that's exactly what you would need if you have a clean platform to achieve some of the effects that you're after. And so I'm a big proponent of effects, because in today's times we've got the best effects available. Anyway, if you're looking for an amp that breaks up and has natural overdrive, I push you toward the 6V of mine. Now, I don't use, currently I'm not building an amp with EL84s. That's like the Vox amp would use. It's even a smaller envelope than these, and it would give you a different tonal palette than what I would be able to give you at this time. I'm kind of sticking to the American tubes at this point. So 6V6 with a 22 watt. If you went on it to the 50, you'd find that I'm using the 6L6. And to give you an idea, there's the difference between the 6V and the 6L6. It's a larger envelope. It has more headroom. The 6V6, by the way, was used in the Tweed Deluxe, the Deluxe Reverb. It's a very common use tube in the smaller amps, up anywhere from the 5 watt to the 20-ish watt range. This tube would be used in the Super Reverb, the Twin Reverb. Quite a lot of amps would use the 6L6. It's a very popular tube. It's a beautiful sounding tube. It's probably my favorite tube of all the power tubes that I'm using at this time. Now, this would have a clean, rich tone, and you would have some overdrive and breakup near the top end of its volume spectrum, let's say, when you've really saturated the tube. By saturating, we mean you're running it into clip and you start getting some really creamy overdrive. Now, I make a third family of chassis that uses the much larger KT family. This tube is a 6550. To give you an idea, here are the 3 tubes together so that you get a chance to see small 6V6, 6L6, and 6550. The 6550 is a larger tube. It has more headroom. You're going to get very little breakup with this tube. So to give you an idea, if you were playing, if like me, you really like Jack Pearson's playing, he's one of my favorite blues players. Well, Jack probably would lean more toward an amp with these tubes. If you're a lover, like, I don't guess anybody comes much higher recommended in this household than Mr. Vince Gill, and if you love that beautiful tone he gets, but he does have some overdrive that he uses, and that's what I love about his playing. You think of Vince, you think of a clean Telecaster sound, but you go to a Vince Gill concert and you're going to hear some really nice usage of taking a tube up to near its saturation point. He's as good at that as anybody I know, and that Vince tours, And Paul Franklin uses, and Bruce Boughton, and a lot of the name guys, Dan Huff uses these in his studio. He would use our 50 series with the 6L6. Let's go to someone like a really good jazz player, someone who really wants some super, super clean. Andy Reese, one of our dearest friends. You probably know him best. You may have seen him touring with Mandy Barnett, or you may have, of course, know him best probably through the Time Jumpers. Andy has a love for the 335s and the Tal Farlows and the Barney Kessels, the great big fat-bodied guitars that are so beautiful but tend to be a little bit muddy if you don't have the right amplification. So in working with Andy, he pushed me to go one step larger and go to the 6550 or the KT. And now we have the new 80 model that has actually uses the KT 88 and KT 120, which is even a larger tube than this. So anyway, enough about that, but I do want you to understand that a lot of people will say, well, I don't need a 50, I only need a 22 because I don't play very loud. Well, I'll be honest with you guys and gals. Doubling the wattage adds 3 decibels at most to the tone. And if it's overdriven tone, our ears perceive it as loud or even still because of the distortion nature, the way it affects the hairs in our ears. So between my 22 and my 50, you wouldn't hear any difference in basic volume.